Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next preview show for the professional leagues of the Alternate Reality Football League. So looking at, firstly, the unbeaten teams that are still going after 10 rounds of the professional leagues. You can see there Man United and Fulham both in the Championship, Sheffield Wednesday in League 1, Bournemouth and Poole, the two Dorset clubs in League 2, Swansea in the National League Premier, Arsenal in the National League Championship, and Bolton in National League 1. As you can see there, Liverpool, Oldham and Everton were also unbeaten going into round 10, but they all lost for the first time. Liverpool are still top of the Premier League. Oldham and Everton still going very well in National League 1, but none of them have their unbeaten records anymore. We're down to 8 clubs that still have not tasted defeat. Will that change after round 11? Sadly for AFC Fylde, they are now the only winless team of the 160 professional league clubs. They are rock bottom of National League 1. As you can see there, Plymouth and Forest Green, they were winless going into round 10, but they both won for the first time, so congratulations to them. They are off and running. So looking at the fixtures coming up for round 11, we'll start with the Premier League. As always, Altrincham against Sunderland, Burton Albion against Ipswich, Darlington Yeovil, Gainsborough versus Huddersfield, Leeds against Millwall, Liverpool against Nuneaton, Rotherham against Middlesbrough, Sheffield United against York, Spurs against Shrewsbury, and Wolves against Welling. Now, looking at some of those fixtures, there's not many that immediately jump up as either big 6-pointers or potential battles near the top. Obviously, Liverpool, beaten last week, will look to get back to winning ways at Anfield as they take on Nuneaton. Spurs, who were also beaten last week, they'll hope to get back to winning ways against Shrewsbury. Sunderland, well, they of course were the first side to beat Liverpool. You'd expect them to go to Altrincham and win. Middlesbrough are the informed side. They travel to Rotherham, which is a little bit of a Yorkshire derby there. Might be a little bit tricky for Borough, but as I say, they are the form side in the division. Yeovil, they're at the opposite end of the scale, of course. They haven't won in 8. They are rock bottom of the form chart. They travel to Darlington. Darlington not exactly flying high themselves, so there is an opportunity there for 3 points. In the Championship, it's Wimbledon versus Manchester United, Crewe against Southport, Dartford versus FC United, Exeter against Fulham, Gateshead Watford, Hull against Manchester City, Maidenhead Wycombe, Maidstone against Port Vale, Morecambe against FC Halifax, Peterborough to take on Gosport, Sutton versus Luton, and Tamworth versus Newport. The standout tie there, without a shadow of a doubt, is Hull against Manchester City. They are 2nd and 3rd respectively in the league, of course. Leaders Manchester United go to Wimbledon. That won't be necessarily an easy match, although Wimbledon's form isn't the best at the moment. Looking at Fulham, of course, they are one of 8 clubs in the country who are still unbeaten. They travel to Exeter. Looking at some other fixtures there, if we look down the bottom, maybe bottom of the table, Gosport, they go to Peterborough. Won't necessarily be easy. Luton won last week. They go to Sutton United. And Dartford against FC United might be an interesting one as well. In League 1, Bishop Stortford against North Ferriby, Blackburn Rovers versus Dagenham, Brentford against Portsmouth, Bristol Rovers to take on Chesterfield, it's Chelsea Aston Villa, Coventry against Brighton, Mansfield to take on Telford, Nottingham Forest against Barrow, Sheffield Wednesday versus Stoke, Southend against QPR, Stainbridge versus Lincoln, and West Ham against Ebbsfleet. Now looking at some of those fixtures, Sheffield Wednesday Stoke should be a belter. Wednesday unbeaten on top of the table, but Stoke are currently 2nd in the form chart. They are on some brilliant form at the moment. Can they come away with Hillsborough with 3 points? West Ham have lost back-to-back matches after previously being unbeaten. They are at home to Ebbsfleet. Can they end their losing run? Looking at some of the other fixtures, Chelsea against Aston Villa should be a good one. That's 2 definite playoff contenders at this early stage. Looking at the opposite end of the table, Mansfield against Telford could be an early 6-pointer. Brighton, bottom of the table, but they've got to go to playoff chasing Coventry, so that's not going to be easy. Bishop Stortford against North Ferriby is another one that you feel could be crucial come the end of the season in the relegation battle. In League 2, Aldershot against Burnley, Curzon Ashton against Weston-super-Mare, Doncaster versus Alfreton. It's East Thurrock against Preston. Gillingham versus Stevenage. MK Dons against Salford. Paul versus Charlton. St Albans against Swindon. Stockport take on Bournemouth. It's Truro against Walsall. Wealdstone versus Rochdale, and Wigan against Hartlepool. Now, we've got to focus, of course, on the top two, the both unbeaten Dorset clubs. Bournemouth, they travel to Stockport. It's not necessarily an easy match. Paul against Charlton. A few weeks ago, you'd have said maybe this was a home banker, but Charlton's form has slowly been getting better as the season's been going on. But you'd have to say Paul will be favourites. Gillingham against Stevenage is two sides that are definitely off form. So can either of those sides get a much needed win? Aldershot against Burnley is another one that features two clubs that have both made good starts to the season. And St Albans against Swindon, that's perhaps another tie where there's two clubs not on brilliant form, but there could be an opportunity there for one of them to start climbing the table. In the National League, starting with the Premier Division, Brackley against Swansea, Cardiff against Tranmere, Chester versus Newcastle, Derby against Crystal Palace, Eastleigh against Oxford United, it's Fleetwood Wrexham, Harrogate Town against Eastbourne, Macclesfield versus West Brom, Margate against Oxford City, Northampton against Braintree, Reading versus Boston, and Worcester against Bradford City. Well, Swansea, of course, are the unbeaten league leaders. They are absolutely flying. But Brackley are right up there with them, and they're on very good form as well. So this could be a really tricky test of Swansea's credentials for the title. Cardiff, their Welsh rivals, of course, in second place. They're at home to Tranmere. Cardiff's form has slightly dipped after such a magnificent start, but they are still right up there as contenders for this title. Derby against Crystal Palace, another two sides who will fancy, and they could potentially be promoted this season. Eastleigh against Oxford United. Eastleigh desperately needs some points. Oxford United not have the best of starts, but are definitely going to be a real test for Eastleigh. Looking at some of the other fixtures as well, I think it could potentially pick out Worcester against Bradford as two clubs that are just bubbling under the surface there. The National League Championship, Arsenal against Norwich, Bradford Park Avenue versus Kidderminster, Bromley against Dover, it's Cambridge against Bath, Carlisle versus Scunthorpe, Gloucester versus Hungerford, Solihull versus Barnet, Southampton against Forest Green, Torquay against Accrington, Whitehawk Grimsby, and Woking versus Bristol City. You have to look at Arsenal, of course, the runaway league leaders. I think they're already 4 points clear at the top of the National League Championship, but Norwich are right up there with them as well. They're going to be a real stern test for Arsenal. Kidderminster, well, they're one of the informed sides in the division. Remember, they lost their first two matches this season. They haven't been beaten since then in the following 8. Can they keep that run going as they travel to a decent Bradford Park Avenue side? Gloucester have been up there as well. They take on struggling Hungerford, and you have to say it'll probably be a home banker. Southampton against Forest Green. Well, before last week you'd have said it looks like a home banker, but Saints, of course, have just kind of slipped off a little bit, whereas Forest Green, of course, got their first win of the season last time out. So can Forest Green go to St Mary's and pull off a bit of a shock? And lastly, National League 1. AFC Fylde against Cheltenham, Bournemouth versus Notts County, Bury versus Guiseley, Chelmsford versus Crawley, Colchester versus Birmingham, Concord Rangers against Bolton, Hampton and Richmond against Blackpool, Hemel Hempstead Town against Leicester City, Leyton Orient versus Chorley, Oldham against Barnsley, and it's Plymouth versus Everton. Well, Bolton, of course, are the new leaders and now the only unbeaten side left in this division. One of 8, as I said right at the beginning of the show, that are left unbeaten in the entire professional leagues, 160 clubs, and Bolton are one of those 8 that have still not been beaten. On paper, it looks like an away banker at struggling Concord Rangers. Everton, of course, lost for the first time last week. They travelled to Plymouth, but of course Plymouth got their first win last week. So all of a sudden, that does not look like what you would normally say would be an away banker. Oldham, of course, lost the big match away at Bolton last week, the battle of two previously unbeaten clubs. So Oldham, can they get back to winning ways as they take on Barnsley? Won't necessarily be easy, but again, they will be the big favourites. And of course, poor AFC Fylde, rock bottom of the entire professional leagues, 22nd in National League 1, and now the only side who have not won a single match this season. Can they finally get their first win as they host Cheltenham Town? Well, that's it for the preview show for going into round 11. Thank you very much once again for watching. Round 11 should be updated. Will probably be next week now. But of course, there's plenty of real-life football for you to enjoy and look forward to coming into the weekend. Thanks once again. Bye.